There are people walking around right now who have never quite felt like they belong to their own generation. Not because they dislike the music or the trends or the language, but because something deeper inside them has always felt out of sync. As if the soul they carry has already lived through seasons the body hasn't reached yet. Some people were never really given the luxury of being young. And if that sentence just made something shift inside your chest, then this is exactly the conversation you've been waiting to find. By the end of it, you'll understand something about yourself that no one around you has ever been able to explain. You're the one your friends have always come to. Not for jokes, not for plans on a Friday night, but for the conversations that happen at 2 in the morning, the ones where someone finally says the thing they've been holding for months. You've always been that person, the one who listens, the one who somehow knows what to say. And even though people praise you for it, even though they call you wise or mature or grounded, there's a quiet exhaustion underneath that role because you didn't choose it. It chose you a long time ago, before you were old enough to understand what it would cost to think about the moments that shaped this. Maybe it was sitting in the back seat of a car during a tense silence between your parents, reading the energy of the room long before you had words for what you were sensing. Maybe it was watching an adult in your life fall apart and realizing, in that terrible instant, that no one else was going to hold things together. Maybe it was something less dramatic, but no less formative, being the oldest sibling, becoming the translator between a parent and the outside world, growing up in an environment where emotions had to be managed rather than expressed. These are the moments that don't make it into childhood photo albums, but they're the ones that rewired everything. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called parentification, a dynamic in which a child is placed, often unconsciously, into the role of emotional caretaker within the family. Sometimes it's instrumental, meaning the child takes on physical responsibilities like cooking, paying bills, or caring for younger siblings. Other times it's emotional, meaning the child becomes a confidant, a therapist, a mediator, absorbing adult-level pain before they've even learned how to process their own. The result is a nervous system that matures ahead of schedule. The brain begins to prioritize vigilance over curiosity, responsibility over play. And the child who lives through this doesn't grow up feeling like a child at all. They grow up feeling like a very small adult trapped in a world that keeps telling them to enjoy their youth, completely unaware that their youth was borrowed before it ever began. What makes this pattern so difficult to recognize is that, from the outside, it often looks like strength. You were responsible, you were dependable, teachers admired you, relatives said it, you were an old soul. And that label, old soul, became something you accepted because it was the kindest explanation anyone ever offered. It sounded almost beautiful, but beneath it was something far more complicated. A child who learned that their own needs were secondary, that the way to earn love was to be useful, and that falling apart was a privilege they simply could not afford. That's not wisdom. That's survival dressed in a language no one questions. And here's where it bleeds into your adult life in ways you may not have fully traced. You struggle to ask for help. Not because you don't need it, but because somewhere inside, the idea of being a burden feels physically unbearable. You overfunction in relationships, anticipating, managing, soothing, while quietly starving for someone to do the same for you. You feel oddly disconnected from people your own age, not because you think you're better than them, but because their lightness feels foreign. Their ability to be careless, to make impulsive decisions without guilt, to laugh without first scanning the room for attention. It fascinates you, and in moments of honesty, it devastates you. Because it reminds you of something you missed. Something you can't go back for. Modern culture complicates this even further. We live in an era that glorifies emotional intelligence, and celebrates those who seem to have it naturally. Social media rewards the articulate, the self-aware, the ones who can name their attachment style and explain their trauma with polished clarity. But what rarely gets said is that hyper-awareness of emotion is not always a sign of healing. Sometimes it's a symptom. Sometimes the person who can read every room, who can sense a shift in tone before anyone else, who always knows the right thing to say in a crisis, that person isn't emotionally evolved. They're emotionally exhausted. They've been performing this role for so long that they've forgotten it was never supposed to be their job in the first place. There's a cost to this that hides beneath the competence, and it's one most people never talk about. It's a specific kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being deeply known as the strong one and never being seen as the one who's struggling. It's the grief of looking back at your childhood and not finding the version of yourself that got to be reckless, got to be confused, got to need someone without earning it first. And it's the slow, creeping realization that you've built your entire identity around a wound. That the thing people admire most about you, your depth, your calm, your emotional maturity, was forged in circumstances that should never have been placed on your shoulders. But this is where the story shifts. Because understanding this doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been carrying something unconsciously, and now you're seeing it clearly for the first time. And clarity, even when it aches, is the beginning of something honest. What you're really feeling isn't that you're too old inside. What you're feeling is the weight of a self that was assembled under pressure, a self that learned to be everything to everyone without ever asking what it might feel like to simply be. Not useful, not necessary, just present, the most quietly. Radical thing you can do now is let yourself be young in the ways you never were. Not in some performative way, not by forcing spontaneity, but by giving yourself permission to not know. Permission to not be the one who holds it together. Permission to sit in a moment without managing it. You spent years becoming fluent in other people's emotions. The work now is becoming fluent in your own, not as a tool for managing the world, but as a way of finally living in it. You didn't become emotionally old because something is wrong with you. You became emotionally old because you were asked to carry things that were too heavy, too early, and you did it, not because you were ready, but because no one else stepped forward. That is not a flaw, but it is a story that deserves to be understood rather than repeated. If this reached something in you that's hard to put into words, sit with it for a moment. You don't have to do anything with it right now. Sometimes the most important realizations don't ask for action, they just ask to be felt. And if you want more conversations like this one, the kind that don't rush past the things most people are afraid to look at, subscribe to Mind Reader 99. There's more here waiting for you whenever you're ready to find it.